Alrighty, how's it going, guys? Hopefully you guys are all having a great Saturday. As you can see here in Seattle, Washington, it is completely gray outside, and I'm assuming it's going to rain at some point. It has not started raining yet, but yeah, very gloomy day here in Seattle. So this week's commander is an interesting one because I actually built this deck a few months ago before I started doing this Commander Randomonium, and that is Radha, Heart of Keld. I went a certain direction with the deck. I kind of am going to keep that same direction a little bit with this, around this time, with a couple little changes, but we'll get into that. So we have Radha, Heart of Keld as our commander this week. So let me go ahead and read it for you. So we have, for one colorless, a red and a green. You get a legendary elf warrior, and she's a 3/3. As long as it's your turn, Radha, Heart of Keld has first strike. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands from the top of your library. Then for 4, a red and a green, you can activate her ability. Radha gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. So a keyword in this card that I've probably said a few times that you picked up on was lands. So that is what we're doing. Lands matter to Radha. So we are going to try to put as much mana stuff in this deck as possible, especially getting into putting lands into play. I think when I built the deck, I had a count, and I believe we had 18 ramp spells in the deck. For ramp, usually what I count as ramp is things that add you mana. So normally, like cards like Dryad of Elysian Grove, where it says you may play an additional land on each of your turns, I'm sort of split on this as to whether or not it's ramp. Because say turn 3, you play your land for turn, you play Dryad, you don't have another land to add in your hand. Doesn't necessarily count as ramp, but because of Radha's ability to be able to play lands off the top of your library, I'm going to go ahead and include this because you might not have a land in your hand, but because you can look at the top card of your library, if it's a land, you can add it in. You have a higher chance of putting a land into play with these types of cards. So Dryad is one of those cards. Azusa, you can play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. Of course, we also have, where is he? Wayward Swordtooth, not that guy, Wayward Swordtooth. Play an additional land on each of your turns, and then I think we have one more. Yeah, Mina and Den. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. So, of our 18, I believe those are the 4 we have that allows you to put extra lands into play. Again, I'm only including that as the ramp because of Radha's ability to put lands. So usually I don't include it as part of the ramp because if you don't have a land in your hand, and you just whiff. So, this case, because of Radha, we're doing it. So we do have our standard ramp, cultivate, search your library for 2 basic lands, reveal them, put one on the battlefield, put one in your hand. Of course, that combined with a Dryad just gives us that land in our hand that we can play if we already put our land for turn. And then, of course, Kadama's Reach, Rampant Growth, Farseek, all the standard ramps. We have a Sakura Tri-Belter over here. Sack, get a land. Yeah. Put lands into play. You'll notice that for our artifacts, the only artifact ramp we have is Soul Ring, just because Soul Ring, it's just a commander staple card. It goes in every deck. I chose not to put the Arcane Signet in. I chose not to put the, Gruul Signet in, just because we want to put lands into play. Radha doesn't care that you have a Signet on the board, but she does care if you have extra lands in play. So I went more of the, hey, let's get lands into play route more than over the, hey, let's ramp with artifacts. Yeah. So, ramp, as I said, we have 18 of those, and then card draw, I believe we have 10 or 11 card draw. Card draw was actually pretty easy to find. Harmonize is one, draw 3 cards, risk cards expertise, which with Radha is fantastic, especially if we can pump her up once. I mean, let's just say we have 6 lands on the battlefield, pump her up to 6. Well, I guess we would need another 6. Let's just say in a grand scheme of things, we have 12 lands on the battlefield. We can pump Radha. All of a sudden, she becomes a 15-15, and then we play Rishkar's Expertise, draw 15 cards. So, and I mean, we do have great mana doublers like Zendikar Resurgence in this deck, which doubles our lands. We have a Nyx Bloom Ancient in our deck, which triples our mana. Growing Rights of Itlimoc, which can just tap for a whole bunch once it turns into a land. So, I mean, it's not unheard of to make Radha a 15-15 and then draw 15 cards. Generally, when I do card draw, I do like to stick more into the artifact or enchantment range, just because that's more continual card draw over, say, like a Rishkar's Expertise or a Harmonize. But Rishkar's Expertise, 6 mana, draw a ton of cards is pretty good, so that's why it's here. But as far as our enchantment card draw, Elemental Bond's pretty good. Radha is a 3/3, so when she comes in, she'll draw us a card. Garruk's Uprising does care about power 4 greater. However, with Radha, we want to give her trample, so Garruk's Uprising is a good card draw, but mainly it's here as a 3 mana, give all of our creatures trample. Really, really good. Zendikar Resurgent, cast a creature, draw a card, and then down in the artifacts, Life Crasher's Bestiary, we get to scry one, which is also really good with Radha because we get to see what we're going to draw. So maybe there's a land on top. It's like, okay, well, obviously if there's a land on top, we'll probably have already played it with Radha, but if there's another one, we can always scry it, draw a card, then look at the card. So, you know, pretty good scrying with Radha. And then, of course, we can pay a green. If we do, we draw a card whenever we cast a creature spell. Great Henge. There's another one. Play creatures, draw cards. It can tap for 2. Generally in this deck, we're only going to be casting this for 2 mana because we're going to have something that's 7 or more on the battlefield. 7 power or more. So Radha can easily get to like a 10 power and then, hey, 2 green. Play this card. All of a sudden we have a lot of card draw. We have a ramp spell. Yes, it's an artifact ramp, but it gets us 2 life. It taps for 2 green. It draws us cards. So, pretty good. And then our interaction in this deck is a little less than I usually put in, but we don't really need a lot of really big interaction with this deck because more often than not, we need more protection than anything in this deck. So we do have some interaction. We got, of course, a Beast Within, Chaos Warp, Corrosive Grip. You'll see a lot of our interaction is more with destroying artifacts and enchantments. We do have like a Decimate. Broken Bond's an interesting card because it'll destroy a target artifact or enchantment, and then we may put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield, so it could actually also ramp us. Depending on when we play this, because we do need to actually target an artifact or enchantment. So if somebody plays something early, it's really good. Later in the game, maybe we have a lot of lands in our hand, still could be pretty good. So, board wipes, of course, Blasphemous Act. Chain Reaction I thought was going to be one that was pretty good in this deck as far as a board wipe goes. I chose this over, there's a 7 mana one that does 20 damage. The name is escaping me right now, but deals 20 damage, so it's basically like a Blasphemous Act for 7 mana. Deal 20 damage to each creature in Planeswalker, but I wanted to go for the 4 mana Chain Reaction because more often than not, even if there's like 6 creatures on the battlefield, it does 6 damage to each of them. So more often than not, that's going to kill everything on the board. Chandra's Ignition's a pretty good card that I didn't actually necessarily think as a board wipe, and then I looked at it again and was like, well, with Radha, that pretty much will wipe the board, so pretty good there. And yeah, and then we got our protection over here. We got Heroic Interventions, good protection. Deflecting Swat can be protection, because if someone tries to target our commander, we just, swat it back at them, so. And then Asceticism is just a card I'm basically going to be putting in every green deck from now on because it's 5 mana, regenerates our creatures, and gives them all hexproof. It's such a good protection spell. Yeah. It's just going to be going in our decks. Bear Umber can also be protection because it has totem armor. So whenever the creature would be destroyed, instead the enchantment's destroyed. So in that aspect, it could also be protection. That's not actually why it's in the deck, but it's still pretty good. It's just an extra added benefit. And so yeah, so basically the way we win with this deck is we want to get Radha really big, give her trample, and then just swing out for commander damage. Pretty Voltron-y style of play, but there's a lot of cards in this deck that can do that. Of course, we added a bunch of stuff to give her trample, like Shadow Spear. Gives her +1/+1 as trample and lifelink. It's pretty cheap to equip. Ember Cleave, +1/+1, double strike and trample. It can come out for 2 mana depending on how many creatures we're attacking with at the time, so it could be cheaper than 6 mana. It also auto equips too, so instead of equipping for 3, so it would be like a 9 mana card, even if we have to pay the 6, it auto equips, so which is pretty nice. Whisper Silk Cloak gives her Shroud, but also can't be blocked, so I mean, not being blocked I think is way better than trample. And then like I said before, Groot's Uprising gives all the creatures trample, and yeah, we want Radha to somehow have a way to get through, because she's going to be a huge creature, so we want to get through. And then one other card I added, because if we have something like Nyx Bloom Ancient out that's tripling our mana, we want to be able to sink that mana into something, so I put a Comet Storm in here, because it's an X spell that can just basically take every opponent out of the game if we have tons of mana. So thought, why not? Usually when I build a black deck, or a deck that has black in it, and have a lot of mana, Torment of Hellfire is usually just an auto include for that, because it just wins the game. So I was looking for a way to end the game if I had a lot of mana, and Comet Storm was the first thing I thought of and looked at, and was like, yeah, this is gonna go in the deck. Can be an easy just win the game card. And then we have just a bunch of like landfall trigger cards, because we're playing a landfall commander. We have Field of the Dead in here, so play lands, have 7 or more lands of different names, which we're going to have because we have a lot of differently named lands, as you can see. Put zombies, Dragon Master Outcast, make giant flyers, and then just giant creatures. Elder Gargaroth comes in, we have a Clothis in here. Morog, give us extra combats whenever lands come into play, which is really nice. Multani's in here. Nesting Dragon gets us more dragons. Oron Frostfang is nice with our commander, because if we can find a way to give her trample, this will also give her Death Touch. And she has First Strike, so not that the First Strike really matters, but just in case we're going against another creature that has Death Touch, Radha will hit for 1 because it only takes 1 damage to kill the creature, and then all that trample damage will go afterwards. So really good with that. Omnath, really good landfall. Put 5/5s into play. When they die, deal 3 damage to a creature or a player. Rampaging Balos, get more green beast creature tokens that are 4/4s. So yeah, you get the picture. Scoop Mob, lands, you have 5 or more lands, gets 4 counters. We're going to be putting lands into play. We're going to be playing big things because we have a lot of mana. You'll see once I hit the stats button, go to the chart, our average mana curve is 3.98. I generally tend to want it to be between 3 and 4, so this is like right on the tail end of that. But we're ramping. As I said before, we have like 18 ramp spells in the deck, so we're going to be having a lot of mana. We're going to have it early. And this number can also be kind of misleading as well, as you'll see like 9 over here. That counts Blasphemous Act, but you're usually going to be playing Blasphemous Act for 1 mana. Of course, Great Henge is 9, but you're most likely going to be playing it for 2 mana. I think more of like Ugin is 8, like you're going to be casting it for 8, so no mana. But so basically, when you see 3.98 and you see like the 9 spells over here, it's kind of misleading as the 3.98. So I was okay with this as the curve because we're ramping out. We're going to be able to play those big spells. And yeah, that's basically what the deck wants to do. I'm going to just go over just a few cards that I really liked in the deck, just a few of my favorite cards. Chandra's Ignition is just an auto win, I think, with this, because if we get Radha big enough, you just play Chandra's Ignition and just kill everybody at one time. I thought it was really good. Plus, it just wipes the board, so she all of a sudden becomes the only creature on the board, and all your opponents have no creatures and their life totals are super low, and you still have a giant Radha. So I thought that was like one of the MVP cards, I think, of this deck, or will be. Morog, I really hope I get to play Morog on Wednesday. This creature is nuts. So for each creature you control, it gets +1/+0 for each time it's attacked. And then whenever you play a land, if it's your main phase, so there will be an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. So basically, you want to go to combat, swing, go to your second main phase, play your land, because then after your second main phase, you'll go right into another combat phase, and then all your creatures will untap, you'll get to swing again. Now, if you could play multiple lands in your second main phase, that's fantastic. Because I do not believe with Morog you'll get another second main phase. I believe it's just you go right into combat. So, unless I'm reading that wrong. Let's see. Whenever a land enters battlefield under control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase. After this phase, at the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures. Yeah, so I think that's how it works. I could be wrong. We'll see. Let's see. And then the other one I really liked, of course, I actually had a Craterhoof Behemoth in this deck. But I decided to go with Overwhelming Stampede just because, yes, we do have some token creator cards. Our commander isn't necessarily wanting to rely on tokens. And more often than not, you're playing Craterhoof with like token themes where you just have a massive board and swing out. So I went more with Overwhelming Stampede, which is more of, hey, you have a giant creature, and then we're going to make all your other creatures giant creatures based off of that creature's power. So the thought is, with Overwhelming Stampede, we pump Radha once with her ability. Say it gets to a 9/9 or whatever. Say she's a 9/9, and we have like 3 other creatures on the battlefield. Instead of playing Craterhoof and them all getting +5/+5, now with Radha, they'll all get +9/+9 and gain trample. So I just thought Overwhelming Stampede, you could include both, but I decided, because I wanted the mana curve to go down just a little bit, it was actually shooting at like 4.2 or something like that. Decided to go against Craterhoof, put Overwhelming Stampede in the deck, get our mana curve down just a little bit, and it still has the same effect. And I think it's a little bit better with Radha. So, you could put Craterhoof in. This is just what I did. And yeah, I think that's it. Playing big things. As you can see, we have 7 mana, 8 mana Ugin. We're going to be playing big things. We're ramping early, playing big things later, hoping our opponents can't keep up with what we're doing, protecting our Radha, protecting our board at the same time, and then just swinging with a bunch of trampoly creatures, or just trying to fling Radha at somebody using Chandra's Ignition. So that is the deck. If you guys want to see it in its entirety, the link will be posted down in the description. And yeah, I had fun making the deck. I think this deck's really powerful. I think it's going to do really good on Wednesday. Don't forget to check that out. Wednesday, we tend to go about 6:30 on Wednesday. It'll be up on the stream's schedule board. Should be on there. And yeah, if you want to hit the follow button, of course you'll get notified once we go live. And yeah, or if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We do a deck tech every weekend. Random commander. I should also notate, I should have probably said at the beginning, but all of the commanders that I choose are based off of commanders that I own. So I do have a lot of legendary creatures, so there is a wide selection I get to choose from. So when I do the random, tab thing, generally I just pick the first one that comes up that I own. And then all of the cards you see here are all cards that I own, because I'm going to take this deck, play it on Wednesday, and I can't play with cards I don't own. So I obviously have to make the deck based around cards that I own. So there's obviously going to be some omissions to what you see here. However, if you do see omissions, I'm curious to see what else you guys would have done. What would you have done differently with this deck? What other cards do you think would have synergized really well with Radha? Just leave them down in the comments. I always love hearing what other people would do with decks and seeing what other kind of strategies you guys could make with this commander and everything. So super awesome. And yeah, check us out on Wednesday. Other than that, I'll see you guys next week for another deck tech. And that is it. Have a good day. Hope you guys stay safe. Thanks.